Hello friends, and you're welcome back to the channel. It's always beautiful to have you here. Wish you happy new year, and it's beautiful to have you here. Today we're just going to look at terminologies in microbiology. A lot of what we do in microbiology has to do with infection, and a lot of the knowledge that we gather is geared towards improving human health. So there are some basic terminologies that is important that we have a grasp on. Number one of such terminologies is saprophytes. Saprophytes are organisms that live on dead and decaying matter. They're able to draw nutrients from dead and decaying matter. And many a times, these organisms are non-pathogenic in nature, meaning that they do not cause any disease of any sort, and they're able to draw such nutrients. Many of them are able to even engage in what you call extracellular digestion. That is, they secrete digestive fluids on the dead and decaying matter, digest that matter, and then suck up that matter into their own system for their nutrition. Some of them are able to do that. Examples are the fungi. A lot of fungi are saprophytic in nature, so you see them living on the backs of trees that are falling and things like that. So that's saprophytes for you. Second, we have what we call parasites or parasitism, and this refers to organisms that live off the nutrients of other organisms. They may not necessarily be living on the organism, or sometimes they live on or inside or outside. But the key important thing to notice is that they are living off the nutrients of that organism. So they are making use of all the nutrients that that organism has, and they are using it for their own, and they are causing harm, damage to that other organism where they are taking their nutrients from. And this is important to note. We also have organisms that we refer to as commensals, and these commensals are organisms that they can inhabit the skin, they can inhabit the nose, they can inhabit different parts of the human body. But commensals in general are organisms that they take nutrients from other organisms, but they do not cause harm. They do not cause problem to their host. Their host is living his life happily, while the saprophyte sometimes feeds off maybe like the waste materials, or the nutrients that they are taking from the host are so limited that they do not cause any problem to the host. Then we have organisms that we call pathogenic organisms, and these are organisms that are able to cause disease. So their entrance, once they come into another organism, problem has come, because they are able to cause disease. And for humans, there are a lot of pathogenic organisms. So organisms that once they find their way into the human body through any of the routes, there are many routes through which they can come in. It could be through the genitals, through the food that one ingests, through piercing of the skin. There are different routes through which you can have this entry. And when you have this entry, you can now have these organisms begin to cause disease in the human being. So these are what we call our pathogenic organisms. Now, it's also important to understand that there's a difference between pathogenicity and virulence. These are concepts that are sometimes confusing, but they are easy to understand. When you talk about pathogenicity, you're talking about the inherent ability of an organism to cause a disease. So any organism that can cause a disease is a pathogen, and is pathogenic in nature. Now you have what you call virulence, and virulence refers to the severity of the kind of illness that a pathogen is able to cause. So you can have 2, 3, 4 different pathogens, and they're able to cause disease, but of different severity. When you think of a disease like Ebola or Lassa fever, these are very virulent organisms causing very virulent diseases that easily lead to fatality. Easily, people lose their lives if they get in contact with such a disease. You also have malaria, which can be mild to moderate to severe. So then you can also have something like our simple running nose, our cold. So when you look at all these different kinds of diseases, the point being made here is that when you talk about virulence, you're talking about what is the severity of the kind of disease that is being caused by the pathogen. The disease, is it so severe that it can lead to the death of the organism, or is it the other way around? Then we also have what we call incubation period, and this is the period between when you have the entrance of the pathogen into the human body and when you begin to see signs and symptoms of that illness. So there's a period, there's a latency period, an incubation period between when a pathogen finds its way into the human body and when the human being himself or herself begins to exhibit signs and symptoms of that infection. And this is very important to note. We'll leave it at that. Tomorrow or the next, we'll begin to talk about different types of infection and what all these different types of infections mean. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening thus far. Remember to like, share our content, and do have a beautiful day. Happy New Year once again.